Hey guys, so I have a really big summer reading wrap up. I'm gonna be covering the months of July and August. It's a lot to talk about, so I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible. And unlike in my other wrap ups, I'm not gonna share these in like my least favorite to my favorite. I'm just gonna share them in the way that I read them. We're just gonna get right into it. On to July, I read How to Walk Away by Catherine Center. I give this one 4 stars. It's like a contemporary fiction / romance, just about the girl who has an accident, and it's her life after the accident and how it kind of changes her relationships, and also like a romance between her and the physical therapist. So it was a good one. Then I read The Good Sister. This is a psychological thriller about this young woman whose life is very orderly and neat, and she has a simple but pleasant life, and she has a sister she's very attached to, and her life kind of starts to change when this guy comes into the picture. And overall, I thought it was so good. Like I really liked this. I think I pretty much read this in a day. I know I read it really quickly. I flew through it, but a good psychological thriller. And it wasn't as much as a thriller as it was just like, I feel like the thriller parts, if you want to call it that, more like happened at the end. But overall, this was a good one. Then I continued with the cozy mystery series that I started earlier in the year, and this is the first one. I read the second, third, fourth. Did I read the 5th book? I don't remember, but they're all the series by Lauren Elliott. I love this cozy mystery series. It's so cozy mystery, like it's exactly what it sounds like. A woman who owns a bookshop in this town, she inherits an estate from her aunt, and it's her life in this town. She gets involved in all these mysteries and all these murders in like each of the books, and it always also involves something to do with a book. Like there's always a book element as a part of the mystery. So they're just delightful. I've given all of them 4 stars. I like all of them. Like they're so fun to read. So I read, like I said, 3 of those over the summer. I'm pretty much caught up with the series, and there's one more I have to read, and then the author is releasing the 6th book in this series in October. So I'm happy to like be caught up with the series, but also sad because they've been just such fun books to read. I'm gonna be sad that I don't have those accessible to whenever I want just the perfect cozy mystery. And I listened to 9 Perfect Strangers on audiobook. I gave this 4.5 stars. This book was so good. I loved it. It's about 9 strangers who all have really messed up things going on in their lives, and they go to this health retreat to get some healing from it all. And I don't know if it's really a thriller. I think some people call it a thriller. It did not feel like a thriller. It was more like a drama. There was like a slight thriller element to it, but overall, it was just so fun to watch these characters. They were really funny, all their stories and how they interacted with each other. And there is a show on Hulu right now. The show is not like the book at all. So I'm starting to enjoy the show more. But at first, I thought this is just so different from the book, and I really enjoyed the book, so it bothered me that the show is different, but I am now appreciating the show's differences. So keep that in mind if you are planning on watching the show after reading this as well. Also, if you have, let me know what you thought about it. I read Survive the Night by Riley Sager and gave this one 4 stars. A lot of people are not a fan of this book, and I still liked it. I still think it held on par with his other books. This one had such good twists in it, and I feel like you have to get through the first half of the book before you really start like getting interested, because it can seem kind of boring in the beginning. So it's basically about this college girl who is doing a rideshare to go home, and while she's in the car with this guy on like a overnight drive, it's a long drive, she suspects that her driver is a serial killer. So that's it. That's a thriller. It's really good though. I thought it was so good, and I have a friend who read it too, and she really liked it. So you know, I feel like you either love it or you hate it, and I definitely fell into the love it category. Then I read Local Woman Missing on audio, and I gave that one 4 stars. This is another thriller novel, and I actually was gonna read this, but then I had a lot of books to read at the time, and luckily I was able to get this on Hoopla. This is about, as it sounds, a woman who goes missing. There were some things I feel like this book definitely didn't have in it that disappointed me. Like there was a character perspective we got in the beginning, and then we literally never got that perspective again, which I didn't like. I mean, I felt like we got invested and then it was just taken away from us, so I don't know why that was that way. Also, I kind of knew what the twist was from very early on, but I didn't know like the full scope of it, so I still enjoyed it even knowing what was going to happen or suspecting, but still lots of twists. This was a good one. And I reread Beach Read because after my A Truth About Forever experience, I just knew I needed to reread more favorites. Loved it again, 5 stars. This is just such a good romance. One more month to go. We're in August now. In August, I listened to the audiobook for The Bride Test by Helen Wong. This is her second book in the Kiss Quotient series, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's about this young Vietnamese woman who travels to America to become the wife of this guy whose mother is just matchmaking because she doesn't have any hope for her son to find a wife. And so that's pretty much, this woman comes over to be his wife. And I just wasn't super interested in the characters or what happened. It wasn't anything that was bad. It just didn't connect with me. So that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. I think a lot of people could probably read this and love this, but there was just something about this. I just ended up getting a little bit bored with it. Then I read Twice Shy by Sarah Hoggle, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. This one surprised me, but also I had no idea what it was about going in, so everything about it was a surprise. It's about this young woman whose life is not what she thought it would be. She's kind of been walked all over, and she's had some bad things happen to her, and she inherits her aunt's estate, and so that totally shifts her whole life, and she has the new job now, like owning this estate and figuring it out, and there's a romance with her and the groundskeeper of the estate. And overall, I thought it was just such a good romance, so sweet and surprising in ways that like I said, I wasn't expecting, but I really loved it, and I would so recommend this romance. I thought it was so good, so funny and endearing. Really liked it. Then I read The Match by Sarah Adams and gave this one 3 stars. This one was just okay for me. I just like this romance as well. I didn't really connect with it. It's about a woman who has epilepsy, and she works with training service dogs, and so she starts working with this 10-year-old girl, and this is her romance with the father. And it was just like okay. It wasn't anything super special, but it didn't put me off of this author, so I'm happy to have found this author, but this one book of hers didn't really suit me. Then I read The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient series, and I gave this one 5 stars. This is definitely my favorite in the series. It's about a young woman who is discovering her autism basically in this book. It's something she's never really explored or knew about herself, and she's also struggling with musically. She's a violinist, and she's hit a huge block, so her overcoming that. But there's also like a part 2 of this book that I don't really want to say what happens in the part 2, but it definitely added a lot of depth to the story, and I ended up really liking it, and I loved the romance. And the only problem I had with it was the ending felt very rushed to me. I feel like we had a lot of time to develop these deep problems, and then I feel like it was really brushed over, like in a couple paragraphs it felt like at the end, and I felt like we could have had a lot more time exploring that. So that was my only downside to this book. Then I read The Perfect Mother by Nina Darden. This was a mistake. I read the wrong book. My friend recommended The Perfect Mother to me by a different author, and I didn't know that, and so I kept reading this book thinking nothing is happening, this book is boring. And it wasn't until I finished the book that I thought, I think I read the wrong book, and I looked it up, and sure enough, there was another book with a different author that was very popular that I read the wrong one. So I would not recommend this one. I gave it 2 stars, but it's probably more of a 1 star. It's a mystery about a woman whose daughter is accused of murder in Spain, and so she has to go to Spain to like help her daughter. But it was just boring. Nothing. It was the most predictable. Like there was no twists, no surprises. It was just, don't read it. I'm sorry, but this was not the right one to read. Then I read A Silent Patient. This was by the author of The Maidens as well, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. Super quick psychological thriller that I read in a day. It has such a crazy plot twist. Everyone always says that, and it is true. I was surprised about this woman who is accused of killing her husband, and then after the event she has not spoken since, and so this psychologist is coming to work with her and try to get her to talk again and figure out what actually happened. So super interesting concept, and the book was really well done. It was fast-paced, and you're also following the perspective of the woman like before the event happened and leading up to like when she's accused of killing her husband. So it was really, really good. And I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This one book of the year, I think, on Goodreads, so I've been putting off reading it, but I ended up giving it 5 stars. Like I actually really did end up liking it. It was different from what I thought it was gonna be, but in a good way. So it's about this woman who decides she doesn't want to live anymore, and when she makes that decision, and she's on the brink of death. She's taken to the Midnight Library where there's a book of her regrets, and she can undo her regrets. And by undoing her regrets, she can live a whole different life. So she can step into this alternate reality, basically, of a life in which that regret she never did. She can live all these versions of herself, and she comes back to the Midnight Library every time she's like dissatisfied with her life and she wants to leave. And if she finds a life that she really loves and she clicks with, she may just live in that life forever. So she's kind of like searching for that one life that she wants to live. So super good. I really enjoyed this. It was different than what I thought, but I really liked it, and I liked the magical realism element to it. I really liked the parallel universe kind of idea as well. Like, that's always super fascinating to me. So I would for sure recommend this one. I mean, I think there's a reason it's book of the year. Also, I read this in a day, super quick read. Then I did an audiobook for The Bookshop on the Corner, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. This was one that I started off thinking was super cute and adorable, and then I just got bored with it. It's about this librarian who's getting phased out of her job, and so she decides to open up this mobile bookshop, and she ends up in Scotland, and there's a romance and learning about the people in the town and her life as it changes, and she's turning into this whole new person. It was like good. I would still recommend it, but personally I was just getting bored with it, and I feel like I had gotten into an audiobook rut, and this book did not help things. So that was probably the problem as well. Last books I read in the month of August were a series, and they're from Candy Steiner, What He Doesn't Know and What He Always Knew. This is like a very like dark, not dark romance, but it's like a heavier drama romance. It's not like a lighter contemporary fluffy one. It's about this woman whose marriage is in trouble, and she's really struggling to connect to her husband at all. And an old flame of hers moves back to her hometown, and those feelings start to come up again, and she just gets very conflicted about who she wants to be with. And I can't say about the second or third books because it's all, you have to based off of the first and second, you know, it's like all spoilers. So overall, I read this with some friends. There were definitely a lot of problems within the book, but that being said, like, it was still very entertaining to read, and it was really fun to have like other friends I was reading it with, because we were able to like bounce our ideas off each other. Keep in mind, if you don't like cheating in books, I mean, that's the premise of this. So if you don't like that, don't read this. If it doesn't bother you as much, like, I can separate myself from it, and I still enjoyed it. So yeah, 4 stars to these books. And that's gonna wrap up my summer reading wrap up. I'm gonna, you know, be filming my September reading wrap up today as well. So hopefully I'll be, you know, doing these on a monthly basis now. Thanks so much for watching. As usual, if you've read any of these, let me know what you thought about them, if you loved them or hated them, where you felt with them. But thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.